Have you ever had a health scare that made you want to retire sooner than planned, but felt completely overwhelmed about what to do next? Today, I'm going to show you how our 3-step process took Ken and Erica, who felt exactly that way, from paralyzed by urgency to having clear options about their timeline. When health makes your retirement feel urgent, but you don't know where to start, having a clear process can change everything. Without it, you could end up working longer than you have to while your best retirement years slip away. You'll see our 3-step process: getting clear on what they wanted, building the plan to fund it, and stress testing it against real scenarios. And after we completed that final step, they're ready to hand in their 2-week notice and start their retirement on Monday. Now, the example uses adjusted details for privacy, but you can apply the same process to your situation regardless of your numbers. Let me tell you a bit more about Ken and Erica. Both 62, married for 34 years, and about to become grandparents for the first time. They've always talked about getting a lake house, a place where the family could gather. Then, Ken recently had to go to the ER after having some chest pains. Tests showed everything was fine, but it reminded them they can't take their future for granted. Suddenly, someday felt like it needed to become soon. So let's look at what they've built over their careers. You can see their total net worth here is $2.9 million. Starting with their investments, Ken has $550,000 in his teacher's 403b. Erica has $900,000 in her IRA and $250,000 in her current employer's 401k. They also have $600,000 in their joint trust account, plus $25,000 in savings for emergencies. So that's over $2 million in total investments. What's important to understand is that most of their retirement savings, about $1.7 million of it, is in pre-tax accounts like Ken's 403b and Erica's IRA. This means they'll owe taxes when they withdraw it. But that $600,000 in the trust account, that's money they've already paid taxes on. It gives them options when it comes to managing their tax situation in retirement. Now, their primary home is worth about $650,000. They still have a $75,000 mortgage, so their home equity is about $575,000. So Ken and Erica have built substantial wealth, $2.9 million in total net worth with over $2 million in investments. But here's what they didn't know. What could this money actually accomplish for them if they stopped waiting for the perfect time to retire? Therefore, we need to figure out exactly what they wanted their money to do for them. First, let's talk about timing. Originally, Ken and Erica had just assumed they'd retire at 67. That's their full retirement age, and that's when they thought they were supposed to retire. But after Ken's health scare, they started wondering about retiring at 65 instead. Ken thought this might actually be perfect timing since it would get them to Medicare age, and the school district was currently paying for their health insurance. For their monthly lifestyle, they wanted $7,000 a month. That's about $84,000 a year to cover the basics: groceries, utilities, home maintenance, all the things that keep their life running smoothly. Right now, their health insurance is covered through Ken's school district, but if it wasn't for the employer contribution, it would cost them about $1,000 per month per person. But here's the good news. Once they turn 65 and get onto Medicare, their costs drop to about $650 per month each. That includes a cushion for any out-of-pocket expenses. Now, let's talk about the fun stuff. They want $10,000 a year for travel for the next 12 years. This isn't about taking expensive luxury trips. Ken and Erica want to do some getaways to warm weather in the winter, and they know they want to travel while they're still active. Eventually they'll slow down, but right now, they want to make sure they don't miss that window. And here's the big one, the lake house. They want to buy a $500,000 lake house when Ken retires. This has been their dream for years, a place where the family can gather, where they can spend their summers, and where their kids and future grandkids can create memories. The timing matters to them. They don't want to wait until they're in their 70s. They want to enjoy as much time as they can at the lake and be able to host family while they're still energetic enough to enjoy it. Now, even though interest rates are higher than they were a few years ago, we started by assuming they'd take out a mortgage on the lake house. 20% down, 6% interest rate, 30-year term. This gives them more flexibility with their cash flow, rather than tying up a huge chunk of their portfolio right at retirement. Owning a lake house comes with ongoing costs. These include the basics of property taxes, insurance, and maintenance. In total, this will cost them about $14,000 per year. So let's put this all together. Retire at 65, maintain their $7 per month lifestyle, travel $10,000 a year while they're still active, and buy and maintain a $500,000 lake house. These are goals that represent what Ken and Erica have been working toward their whole careers. But we still need to understand how they're going to fund them. And before we can figure out what their portfolio needs to do, we need to understand what guaranteed income they'll have coming in. Right now, Ken and Erica are both still working. Ken makes $95,000 as a teacher. Erica makes $180,000 as an attorney. That's $275,000 in combined income. But when they retire at 65, those paychecks stop. So what's going to replace them? Ken has a pension through the school district, $36,000 a year starting when he retires. This is a life-only pension with a 50% survivor benefit, which means if something happens to Ken, Erica would then receive $18,000 annually. Now here's something important to understand about Ken's situation. He's not eligible for Social Security because his school district pays into a pension plan instead of Social Security. This is pretty common with teachers, and it's why that pension becomes so critical for his retirement income. Erica, on the other hand, has been paying into Social Security her whole career as an attorney. She plans to claim Social Security at age 67, her full retirement age. Her estimated benefit is $3,600 per month, or about $43,000 annually. So Ken will have his $36,000 pension starting at retirement, and Erica will have $43,000 from Social Security starting at 67. Now, we had their goals and we knew their income sources, but we needed to see if there was a gap between what was coming in and what they wanted to spend. Therefore, we need to bring this all together in what we call a cash flow analysis. This shows us year by year what money is coming in, what's going out, and whether their savings can handle the difference. This is really the heart of retirement planning, seeing if the numbers support the life you actually want to live. The cash flow analysis shows us exactly what happens year by year, decade by decade. Let me walk you through this left to right. Here we have their ages, then income coming in, expenses going out, and finally the net flows, what their portfolio needs to cover. Let's start with income. In 2026 and 2027, they're both still working. $275,000 in combined income. Then, in 2028, the salaries stop when they retire at 65. Ken's pension kicks in immediately, $36,000 annually. But Erica's Social Security doesn't start until 2030 when she turns 67. That's when their guaranteed income jumps from $36,000 to about $80,000. Now, let's look at the expense side. This consists of basic living, housing, healthcare. These are the foundation. Everything else is about the life they want to build on top. First, their basic monthly expenses, about $84,000 annually and growing with inflation. That's $7,000 every single month, whether they're traveling, entertaining, or just staying home. Next is housing costs. Right now, they have about $19,000 annually in mortgage payments on their primary home. But watch what happens in 2030. Their mortgage gets paid off, which drops their housing costs significantly. Now, healthcare. And this is exactly why we run these detailed projections. Take a look at the drop in healthcare costs from 2030 to 2031. This is because of the 2-year look back on Medicare surcharges. Once they've been retired for a couple of years, they no longer have to pay these surcharges due to their reduced income. These are the kind of details that a lot of people miss when they try and plan their retirement. And then vacation home costs. Once they buy the lake house, that means mortgage payments, property taxes, insurance, maintenance, about $45,000 annually to own and maintain their dream home. So they're not just buying a house, they're taking on $45,000 in annual commitments. Their goals include that $10,000 annually for travel, growing with inflation for about 12 years while they're active. But we also need to remember to plan for that lake house down payment. In 2028, when they retire, the down payment and closing costs show up as just over $100,000. Now, there's one more part of the picture that a lot of people forget to factor in, and that's the tax situation. Notice how low their tax payments are in the early retirement years? That's because we're starting by pulling money from their taxable trust account, which keeps their taxable income down. This might not be the optimal long-term strategy, but it's a reasonable place to start and something we'd analyze more deeply with our clients. Now, here's where it all comes together, the net flows. While they're working, they're actually saving money, small positive flows. But remember, they're each still maxing out their 401k contributions during these working years. So they're continuing to build their retirement savings right up until they stop. Then 2028 hits hard. Salaries stop, lake house down payment, and they need over $300,000 from their portfolio that year. Imagine watching $300,000 come out of your portfolio in a single year. That's a big number, even when you have over $2 million saved. It's enough to make anyone nervous. Once Erica's Social Security kicks in, their portfolio needs to cover $100,000 to $140,000 annually to fund the gap between their guaranteed income and everything they want to do. So here's what this tells us. Ken and Erica have reasonable goals. Their spending isn't extravagant, but there's a significant gap between their guaranteed income and the life they want to live. But raw dollar amounts don't tell the whole story. Therefore, we need to look at the withdrawal rate to see whether their portfolio can actually handle these outflows sustainably over time. Now, here's how withdrawal rates work. If you have $100,000 saved and you need $5,000 for the year, that's a 5% withdrawal rate. Simple math. How much you're taking out divided by how much you have. So the question for Ken and Erica is, are their withdrawal rates sustainable? This chart shows us Ken and Erica's withdrawal rate year by year throughout their retirement. Take a look at that first year. They're pulling over 10% of their portfolio to cover retirement expenses and that lake house down payment. That's a significant bite out of their savings. Year 2 is still challenging, over 6% withdrawal rate because they're covering all their expenses, but Erica's Social Security hasn't kicked in yet. But here's where the story gets better. Once Erica's Social Security fully kicks in, right around here, watch what happens to the withdrawal rate. It levels out around 4%, which is a lot more sustainable long term. This is exactly the kind of pattern we see with couples who retire before their full Social Security age. Higher withdrawal rates early on, then they stabilize once guaranteed income starts. The way I think about withdrawal rates is like this. Anything consistently over 5% makes me nervous. But temporary spikes, especially when they're followed by more reasonable rates, those can work if the portfolio can handle the early pressure. Now here's the thing about withdrawal rates. They assume your portfolio grows by the same amount every year. But we all know that's not how markets work. What if Ken and Erica retire and the market drops 20% in their first year? Suddenly, that 10% withdrawal rate becomes 12 or 13% of a smaller portfolio. Or what if we have a situation like 2000 to 2002, where the market drops 3 years in a row? Could their plan survive that kind of a scenario right when they're taking out the most money? This is exactly why we stress test every plan against every possible market scenario to see if it can survive the worst case timing. We run what's called a Monte Carlo analysis. Think of it like this. We take their plan and test it against 1,000 different possible futures. Some have great market returns. Some have terrible crashes. Most are somewhere in between. We want to see in how many of these 1,000 futures does their money actually last. Here's the original plan, retiring at 65. 93% probability of success. That's excellent. It means in 930 out of 1,000 market scenarios, their money lasts throughout retirement. And look at the ending portfolio value, over $4 million on average. That's not just surviving, that's thriving. Now, although Ken and Erica were excited about the idea of being able to retire at 65 instead of 67, we encouraged them to dream bigger. After Ken's healthcare, they'd realized something. They'd been so focused on doing the responsible thing that they'd never asked themselves, what if we didn't have to wait at all? What if that health scare was their wake-up call, not just to retire a little earlier, but to start living the life they wanted right now? What if, instead of waiting until 65, they could retire next year at 63? So we ran the numbers on retiring at 63. Now, we're down to 74% probability of success. That's a meaningful drop, 19 percentage points lower. And the ending portfolio value drops to about 1.7 million. Now, most people would look at 74% and say, that's not good enough. But here's where we need to dig deeper. Let's look at what's actually happening over time. This chart shows their invested assets, the portfolio they're drawing from. The blue area shows the difference between retiring at 63 versus 65. By the end, retiring at 63 leaves them with about 2.5 million less in invested assets. But here's the part most people miss. Let's look at their total net worth, not just their portfolio. Even in the early retirement scenario, their net worth ends at over 4 million. Yes, waiting until 65 gets them to about 6.5 million versus 4.1 million if they retire at 63. That's about a 2.4 million difference. But here's the key insight. Even when that 74% plan fails, meaning they run out of invested assets, they still have close to 2 million in home equity that they could tap into. The way we explain this to couples is this. Those failures aren't running out of money completely. There's scenarios where you just may need to make some adjustments. Maybe that's a reduction in spending, or maybe tapping into a little bit of that 7 figures of home equity. It's not ideal, but it's not going broke. So the real question for Ken and Erica becomes, what are those extra years of time worth to them? After Ken's health scare and wondering if they'd even have a retirement, what is it worth to them to have as many years as they can enjoying their lake house with their kids and grandkids? Or looking at it another way, is the confidence of a 93% success rate worth waiting 2 more years when they're already questioning whether time is guaranteed? This is exactly the kind of analysis that helps couples make informed decisions rather than just hoping for the best. There's no right or wrong answer. It's about understanding the trade-offs and choosing what aligns with your values. For Ken and Erica, this analysis can help give them something they haven't had in months: permission to stop waiting. They realize that even in the worst case scenarios, they could still be financially secure. Sometimes the biggest risk isn't running out of money. It's running out of time to enjoy what you've built. Ken and Erica went from being paralyzed by health scare urgency to being ready to hand in their 2-week notice and start retirement on Monday. What changed wasn't their $2 million portfolio. What changed was having a clear process when time suddenly felt urgent. We walked through our 3-step process together, getting clear on what they wanted, building the plan to fund it, and stress testing it against real scenarios. That systematic approach revealed they had far more flexibility than they realized. They could retire years earlier than planned and still have millions left over. What we've learned after working with hundreds of couples is that health scares change timelines, but proper analysis reveals options you never knew you had. You might have more flexibility than you think when urgency strikes. The key is having the right framework to cut through the overwhelm. If this case study has you thinking about your own situation, subscribe for more real-world retirement planning insights. Because the best time to start planning isn't when you're ready to retire, it's right now. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.